Hi guys, welcome to Quantitative Research Methods. I'm your instructor, Erin Panda. So I've made 4 videos for you to watch this week before class. In this video, you're going to learn about what is quantitative research methods, what you should get out of this course, and why it might be important to you. In the next video, you're going to learn more about the structure of the course and why you're watching these pre-recorded videos in the first place. Then in the following videos, we're going to dive into our first week's content. So let's get started. What is quantitative research methods? Well, here's your definition from the textbook. It says quantitative research is based on measuring variables for individual participants to get scores, usually numbers, and we later do stats on these numbers to summarize them and to make sense of them. I know what some of you might be thinking. Stats. First of all, maybe it sounds a little boring, maybe a little overwhelming, maybe for some even a little scary. Well, now that we got the elephant out of the room, let me tell you, let's talk about the boring part. At least that part. I'm going to do what I can. In fact, I've made it my personal mission to try to make this course as interesting as possible so that it is not boring. And by using examples that maybe apply to you or to children, hopefully you'll see how the content is relevant to you and to your future work with kids. In terms of the scary math part, this is not actually a scary math course. The most that you're going to have to do is to calculate an average, maybe compare two numbers, to look at a figure and to describe the pattern that you see in the figure, to make your own figure. Your TAs and I are going to be here to support you throughout this whole process. You can do this. All right, well, now that we've got that out, and I hope that we can keep the discussion about this going and when we meet in class, what might you actually get out of this course? Well, when I asked this question to students in previous years, here's what they said. This course will be helpful for me because it'll help me to better understand how to conduct quantitative research on children properly and ethically in the future. This statement may apply to you in particular if you want to go on to do a fourth-year honors thesis, which I highly recommend that you do. But even if you have no intention of doing research in the future, maybe some of you are thinking of going into education, into some career where you'll be working with kids in a social work or a mental health capacity. This course is going to give you the tools to be able to know how you can measure growth, learning, or change in your kids, how to be able to compare groups of kids, how to be able to take your kids and maybe compare them to a normative sample. This course will be able to help you to evaluate research studies to be able to determine for yourself whether the conclusions make sense and whether they apply to your kids. This course will also be a foundational course where you're going to learn the skills that you'll be able to use in future courses at Brock. So you're going to learn how to effectively and efficiently read and summarize research articles, and you're going to develop the scientific writing skills to be able to communicate your ideas effectively. Here are some of the key learning objectives for this course. So by the end of the course, you should be able to describe the scientific method and the research process. You should be able to compare and contrast various research strategies and designs to find, analyze, and evaluate published research, to describe the extent to which we can trust and generalize the results of a research study. We're going to come to know this in terms of saying the extent to which a study has high internal or external validity. Finally, you're also going to develop your own original research question, your own hypothesis, and then propose the best method to address it. So I'd like to hover around this last point here and using an example, try to illustrate what I mean and why this might be important. You don't have to memorize anything. It's more to give you a sense of where this course is going. Okay, so this summer, this article came up in my newsfeed. It's from the Toronto Star, and it summarizes and describes the results of a quantitative research study that suggests that a popular artificial sweetener has been linked to blood clots and heart attacks. And it turns out a couple different studies were done this summer, all suggesting the same thing. So here's another article, this time summarizing the results from a different study using a different artificial sweetener, but that's finding a similar conclusion. So these are artificial sweeteners, xylitol, erythritol, that are found in diet drinks, energy drinks, a lot of low-cal diet foods, and they tend to be marketed. They're sold in health food stores, and they tend to be marketed as healthy alternatives to sugar. Now, before we go and freak out, the first thing we need to do is check the original source. We want to make sure that the Toronto Star is accurately reporting the results of those research studies. Luckily, they give us the links, so it's easy to find, and we can read these studies for ourselves. In reading these studies, we want to now ask ourselves an important question. How was the study done? In particular, what was the research strategy or research design that was done? And can we trust that the conclusions follow logically from what was done? We're going to come to know this as to what extent does the study have high internal validity, which is the extent to which a study can produce a single unambiguous explanation for the relationship between two variables. So in this case, the relationship between artificial sweetener and heart attack. So this will be an important concept that you're going to learn about in this course. We're going to talk a lot about different research strategies and different research designs, what they are, how we do them, and importantly, how the research strategy is going to inform the kind of research questions that we can ask, which is going to in turn determine the kind of conclusions that we can draw from the study. So going back to these articles, here is the graphical abstract from one of the articles, and so that we can look and see what exactly was done. It turns out they did a couple of different studies. In their first set of studies, they did what they called observational research. In our course, we're going to call this a correlational research strategy. They basically looked at a large group of people, measured how much artificial sweetener they had naturally in their blood, and then followed them and looked to see how many people went on to have a heart attack or a stroke. The benefit of this kind of study is that we're testing a large number of people from different walks of life, doing what they would do naturally in their everyday lives. The downside, though, is because the researchers are not giving the people the artificial sweetener and they're not controlling for other variables that could also play a role, it's very hard for us to determine from this kind of research design whether it's the artificial sweetener that's causing people to go on to have heart attacks. It could very well be that people who are already at risk for having a heart attack tend to eat more diet foods that contain artificial sweetener, and it's those people that go on to have the heart attacks. So what we're basically measuring in this study is that people who are at risk for heart attack go on to have a heart attack. If the study had just left it at this, because of the biases that are inherent to the kind of designs, it would be very difficult for us to draw conclusions that it's the sweetener that's causing people to go on to have heart attacks. If it had just been this kind of research, we'd want to be really skeptical of the conclusions that the Toronto Star drew. In this case, however, there was actually a bunch of different studies that were done, and the researchers also did what they called an intervention study. In our course, we're going to call it a true experiment. They basically took people, asked them to come in, volunteers into the lab. They gave them artificial sweetener, and then they looked at their blood to see how the composition of their blood changed, and did it do so in such a way that put them at risk to having a heart attack. And in other studies, they compared these people to people who didn't have artificial sweetener, who maybe had glucose, to show that it's just the people who had the artificial sweetener that showed changes to their blood. And the results of this suggest all of them sort of point to that it's the artificial sweetener that could be a challenge. So this really points to one of the main goals of the course, is for you to be able to identify these different research strategies and know that different research strategies can answer different research questions. When we're reading a research article, we also want to ask questions like who participated in the study? Um, This is really important because we want to know if the results from these people who were tested doing these things at this point in time are also going to apply to different people in different contexts and different situations. This will allow us to determine whether the results of one study are also going to generalize and apply to me and to the people that I'm interested in. We're going to come to call this the external validity of a study. In this case, the study was done with healthy volunteers. So we can probably conclude that the results are going to generalize to other people, other healthy people. However, it's unknown whether the results are also going to generalize to people who maybe have diabetes or who already have a heart condition. It really points to the need for future studies to look at these more vulnerable populations. This study was also done where they had people just drink basically one can of Diet Coke, and they looked to see how did it change their blood after half an hour. It also points to the need for more studies that can be done on a longer period of time to be able to see the long-term effects of these artificial sweeteners. Can you believe it? There's really been very little research looking at the long-term impact that artificial sweeteners that are sold in stores have on our health. Maybe this will give you some ideas for what you want to look at for your research proposal in this course. So this one of the big things about research is that it's an iterative process. This is the research process. You're going to see this figure a lot. It's in the front cover of your textbook, and it's going to basically guide the whole structure of our course. Research is an iterative process that builds upon what's been done before to answer a new, unique research question. Throughout the course, we're going to be talking about these different stages of the research process. And like I said, we're going to be hovering a lot on the stage of selecting a research strategy and a research design and talking about what are the kind of questions and conclusions we can draw from a research study depending on what was done. Until that point when future research is done, I think I might agree with these authors that suggest that maybe we should avoid artificial sweeteners in our diet until more research has been done. So ultimately, in this course, my big hope is that you will leave the course being an informed consumer of knowledge, who remembers that antidotes and opinion is not the same as data, who considers the source and finds the original source if necessary, who asks, who funded this research, and could there be a possibility that there's a conflict of interest? I hope that you'll also come to be able to evaluate the research methods so that you can decide for yourself whether the conclusions make sense and generalize to other people. Finally, you'll come to understand what this phrase means, that correlation is not causation. So to summarize, this is not a scary math class. I hope that you will find it interesting and engaging and that you will come to learn skills to help you in your other courses at Brock and ultimately to become an informed consumer of knowledge. I hope you enjoy this course. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.